suffers from other citizens, while the chief of the state is personally present. From another point of view, it is understood that the jiva, or the living entity, is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nuisance, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the Father and Protector of every living entity, and He is known as the Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of the living entities. Why then should the living entities be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksulmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, I'll read the translation again. So this is Canto 3, Chapter number 7, titled Further Inquiries by Vidura. And today we'll be discussing from text number 6. So translation is, the Lord as the Supersoul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? So after hearing, as we've been hearing over the last couple of days, after Vidura hearing from Maitreya Rishi about the creation of the material world, now in this chapter Vidura is putting forward some more questions at the lotus feet of Maitreya Rishi. And so far in the first 6 verses that we've covered in this chapter, he is basically asking 2 main questions. The first question Vidura asks Maitreya Rishi at the start of this chapter is in text number 2. And the first question is in relation to Krishna, or in relation to Mahavishnu, or Krishna as the Supreme Ishvara. And the second question that Vidura is asking towards Maitreya Rishi, which we're seeing now in today's verse, text number 6, and also we saw in yesterday's verse, text number 5, is in relation to the jiva. So as we heard in the previous chapters, Maitreya Rishi, in the course of describing the creation of the material universe, he first starts from Mahavishnu, how Mahavishnu's glance, everything happens. The pradhan gets activated, then it comes to Mahatattva, and so on and so forth. So the first question that Vidura has is, I'll read the translation again for text number 2 of this chapter. So this is in relation to Krishna, or the Ishvara. O great Brahmana, since the Supreme Personality Godhead is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and the activities? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? So this is his first question, and its relation with Vishnu, that he's saying that, okay, we heard that Vishnu, with his glance, he comes in touch with material nature, the modes of material nature. How is this so? Because Krishna is supposed to be transcendental. How is he interacting with his mature energy? And also, we'll see how this is I think, text number 9. In text number 9, Maitreya Rishi will start answering these questions. And the first thing Maitreya Rishi says in return to answer this question, he's saying that this whole conception of Krishna when he's creating the material universe, when he's either taking avatars or incarnations, when he's dealing with the material energy, some philosophers, they have this conception that Krishna, when he comes in contact, he gets overcome by his material potency. But actually, Maitreya Rishi will explain later on that this is not so, and this is completely illogical. So in text 9, Maitreya Rishi, he'll answer this first question in relation to Krishna as the Ishvara. How does he come in contact with the material energy? So I'll just read the translation for that verse. Certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman, or the Personality Godhead, is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain that he is unconditioned. unconditioned. This is against all logic. So Maitreya Rishi, he just brushes aside this question about how does Krishna come under the influence of material nature by just saying that this question itself is illogical. It's just like someone saying that sugar is salty or salt is very sweet. It's illogical to make such a statement that sugar is salty, because by definition sugar is sweet. So in the same way, Maitreya Rishi is saying that this whole statement by you, or this whole question by you, that how does Krishna interact with material energy and how does he get overcome or in touch, it's illogical. How so? Prabhupada, in the purport, he gives a nice metaphor or analogy to help us understand. Prabhupada says, just like we have the sun, and the sun has different energies, and by the sun's potency, Prabhupada explains darkness is the result of sun. If the sun moves away, then there's immediately darkness. And the same way, clouds, they're also the energy of the sun, or they're also caused by the sun. The sun evaporates the water in the ocean, and clouds are formed. So clouds are produced by the sun, darkness is produced by the sun, and the same way snowfall, Prabhupada explains, is also produced by sunshine. So these are all different energies, or all these different things like darkness, clouds, and snowfall. They're all being produced by, or they're all being caused by the sun's potency. But although these things are being produced by the sun's potency, they can only cover a certain insignificant amount of sun rays. When the clouds come in the sky, the clouds can never cover the whole sun, because the clouds, being the potency of the sun, can never overcome the sun, because the sun is so great and vast. But the clouds can cover over some small, tiny little insignificant amounts of sun rays. In the same way, darkness is being produced by the sun, but darkness can never overcome the sun. In the same way, Prabhupada explains, snowfall happens by the presence or the potency of the sun, but snowfall can never overcome the sun. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that these three different things, darkness, snowfall, and clouds, just like they're being produced by the sun, but they can never cover the sun, or they can never have any influence over the sun. It will be an illogical statement to say that the sun, the whole sun planet was covered over by clouds. That's impossible. The clouds are so insignificantly small in comparison to the sun. But these clouds, they can cover a small, insignificant amounts of sun rays, because the sun is so great. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains, Krishna, he's like that sun, and material energy, or Maya, Durga Devi, she is like Krishna's energy. And the energy can never overcome the energetic. The energy is the energy of the Lord, and by definition, how can the energy overcome that person who is controlling it? So in this way, Maitreya Rishi, who answered the first question by Vidura, that this whole question itself, that Krishna coming under the influence of Maya, that whole statement itself is illogical. And that's how he just answers it, just by brushing it aside. Now the second question that Vidura is asking, I'll read yesterday's verse also. So in text 5 and today's verse, he has asked this question about the jiva, or the prakriti. So in text 5 he is saying, the pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in essence? So that was yesterday's verse, and in today's verse he is saying, the Lord as the super soul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? So the second question in relation to the jiva, Vidura is asking, is how is it that the jiva, who is also part and parcel of the Lord, how is it that he's being overcome by suffering? How is it that he's coming into ignorance? Because he's pure consciousness, how is he coming into this world, engaging in the material energy, and how come he's suffering? And today's question is especially pretty powerful question. He's saying that Krishna, the Supreme Lord, who is the maintainer of all of us, Krishna is the Supreme Master, he's our Father, and he's present there right within the heart. And despite Krishna being present so close to us, right next to us in our hearts, how is it that we're suffering? And Prabhupada is giving the example in the purport that, I'll read from the purport, Prabhupada saying, a citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority, but how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? So Prabhupada is giving another example that, okay, when there's no police around, then it's possible some crime or theft to go, and then there's some possible that someone might come rob us or steal something from us, punch us, bash us, or inflict some kind of misery upon us. But if there's a police officer right next to us, then how can any harm come to us? Because that police officer is supposed to protect us from any harm from other rogues and thieves in society. So in the same way, Vidura's question is this to Maitreya Rishi, that Krishna, the Supreme Lord and Master, our Supreme Loving Father, our Supreme Protector, is personally present with us in our hearts, then how is it that Krishna is letting us suffer through so many miseries? So it's a pretty intelligent or powerful question that Vidura is asking towards Maitreya Rishi. And this, again, Maitreya Rishi, who will answer later on, in text number 10 and 11. I'll read the translation for those two verses. In text 10, Maitreya Rishi will answer that the living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. In text 11, Maitreya Rishi says, as the moon reflected in water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with water appears to be qualified as matter. So basically what Maitreya Rishi is saying in answer to this question of the jiva is that the soul, due to ignorance, all of his sufferings is just due to his ignorance of identifying with the material body. Just from that root cause of identifying with the material body, all these miseries or sufferings happen. And Krishna, he can't be blamed for this. And as we're hearing the last few classes, how every single jiva, Krishna has given them that independence. And by the misuse of the independence, we get all suffering. And we're liable for whatever comes. So in this way, Krishna is not responsible. And the example that Maitreya Rishi gives, he says that we're suffering just like a man who in a dream, he sees his head cut off. In the purport, Prabhupada explains what this actually means. Prabhupada says that to have one's head cut off and then to see one's head being cut off and hanging somewhere is actually impossible, because once our head is cut off, that's it, we die and we don't have power to see anymore. But in a dream, it's possible to see our head cut off, and in a dream, it's possible to see someone is cutting off our head, someone is taking up of chopped off head and hanging it somewhere in the room. So factually or realistically speaking, in real life, that's not possible. It's not possible for someone to see their head being chopped off and to see how someone is killing them. But in a dream or in a hallucination, it's possible to see. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that when the living entity, when the jiva, he enters into material world and he gets overcome by avidya or ignorance, then just like in a hallucination, one imagines so many different things, or in a dream, one dreams of so many things which isn't actually factual. In the same way, the jiva, he goes into mass ignorance or mass hallucination or into a mass dream-like state. And in this way, he imagines different things. He imagines, okay, I am the enjoyer. I'm going to enjoy or control this world like Krishna. And in the same way, different sufferings will come upon him. Just like the suffering of someone in a dream seeing his head being chopped up, in the same way he'll imagine different happiness and distress coming upon him. So all of this, in this way, Maitreya Rishi, using this example, he explains, all of this whole material existence itself is just like a big hallucination, it's just like a big dream. Because the pure living entity is, yes, as you were rightly saying, is separate from this whole material existence. It's, by definition, by constitution, it's the servant of Krishna. Its constant position is in the spiritual world, but because of that desire that jiva has, he comes into this world and he undergoes this big dream-like state. Another thing Prabhupada explains that in relation to this analogy in the purport, Prabhupada explains that sometimes in a class there will be different students and there will be some naughty students and they'll never listen to the teacher. So the teacher, to discipline those students, to make them into proper students, the teacher will scare them by saying, you know, so and so, if you don't stop doing this, if you don't behave yourself, then I'm going to chop off your head and I'm going to hang it at the front of the classroom for all the other students to see. Now, when the little children, they hear like this, that the teacher is going to chop off my head and hang it on top of the classroom, then they immediately become scared. And then they stop their mischief and they act as good, nice students in the classroom. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that this sufferings or this punishments that is coming upon the living entities in this material world, the purpose of this is to rectify our consciousness. Just like we were hearing a few days ago, the analogy of the prison house. So what's the purpose of the prison house? The purpose of the prison house is to rectify the consciousness of certain citizens who aren't behaving themselves in the real world or in the society outside. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that when Maitreya Rishi is using this example of someone's head being chopped off and someone seeing their head being hung up, this is done to scare the living entity to behave himself. So this is the purpose of all the suffering. The purpose of why we undergo so many different sufferings in this material world is to force the living entity to understand that life in this world is not proper, this isn't a proper place to be, and this way it's supposed to rectify consciousness and help us go towards Krishna. Same thing Prabhupada explains. I was reading one pastime in 9th canto, where Sukadeva Goswami is giving a summary of Ramayana. In that section, Prabhupada is explaining, or there's one pastime that Sukadeva Goswami explains, that when Lord Ram, he's going to cross the ocean and he wants to go to Lanka, at that time he asks Varuna Dev to please give me way so I can cross the ocean and go to Lanka and get back my wife Sita Devi. And it's mentioned that Lord Varuna, he doesn't answer Lord Ram's request. And Lord Ram, it's mentioned, he patiently waits for 3 whole days. So for 3 whole days, Lord Ram, he patiently waits at the shore of the ocean, and he expecting the ocean, Varuna Dev, to come and give him way, or give him audience, or say something. But Varuna Dev just completely ignores him, doesn't do anything. And Lord Ramachandra, he patiently waits for 3 days. After 3 days, when nothing happens, then Lord Ramachandra, he becomes angry, and with anger he looks at the ocean. And it's mentioned when Lord Ramachandra, with his angry eyes, he was transcendentally angry eyes, he's looking at the ocean, all the living entities in the ocean, they start fearing for their life. Because he is the Supreme Lord, just simply by his eyesight, he can dry up the whole ocean. So all the living entities, they immediately start becoming overcome by fear. Then finally, Varuna Dev, he comes, falling at Lord Ramachandra's lotus feet, begging forgiveness. And in his prayers, Lord Varuna, he says something nice. He says that persons like me, we're very stupid and dull-minded. We're just like animals. He uses a word called jada diya. Diya means intelligence, and jada means just like dumb intelligence, just like that of animals. So in this way, Varuna Dev, he very humbly submits himself into Lord Ramachandra's lotus feet and begs forgiveness by saying that persons like me, we're very stupid and fallen, and our intelligence is just like that of animals. And the Prabhupada explains what does it mean by this term jada diya, or animalistic intelligence. Prabhupada says animals, you can never preach to them or you can never teach them something just by talking or reasoning with them. The only way you can train animals, the only way you can teach animals is by the stick. Only if you get a stick and hit the animal or punish the animal in some physical way, that's the only way you can train the animal to do something like you want. Just like in a circus, if you want to train the lion or if you want to train certain animals to do some tricks, or if you want to, the caretaker of the elephant, he'll always have a stick. Or the rider of a horse, he'll have a stick. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains, when it comes to teaching animals, when it comes to educating animals, reasoning with animals by speech, by words, by logic will never work. The only way you can teach animals something is by the stick. Only if you beat them with a stick and punish them, that's the only way you can understand. And Prabhupada explains that in society, in the material world, there will always be this class of people who have this animalistic intelligence, this jada diya. There will always be a class of citizens in society who are atheists, who are agnostics, or who are materialists, soul sense gratifiers, or impersonalists, who never surrender to the Lord, even though the Shastras repeatedly say, surrender to the Supreme Lord, you'll be happy, everything will be fine. Still, there will be so many persons in society who will always maintain this animalistic intelligence. So, because they can't learn by good reasoning, because they can't learn by logic, they can't learn just by hearing from the Shastras, the only way Krishna can teach them, the only way Krishna can educate them, is just like one educates animals, by using the stick and beating them and by punishing them. So that's why Prabhupada explains, in that purport Prabhupada is explaining, that's why the Supreme Lord, he inflicts or he forces suffering upon the jivas in this material world. through things like natural disasters, hurricanes, tsunamis, pandemics, viruses going around, sufferings due to material nature, drought, flooding, so on and so forth, suffering due to other living entities, and suffering caused by one's own mind. Because that's the only way the certain jivas will learn. Because the jivas, they're so much bound in ignorance, they're so dull-minded, just like animals. The only way they'll get out of their ignorance, the only way they'll think something beyond sense gratification, if someone comes with a stick and starts beating them. So that's the service Mother Durga Devi does for Krishna. Just like the caretaker of an animal, to train the animal, he has to beat the animal to train him or to make the animal act or behave properly. So in the same way, Durga Devi, with her trident, it's a service to inflict suffering upon us. And she does this to help us rectify our consciousness. She does this so we can turn our face towards Krishna. When different punishments come upon the jivas, like tsunamis, hurricanes, or some big pandemic like currently is going on, then people immediately start thinking, when so much suffering and pain comes, they start becoming more spiritual, they start going more towards the spiritual side, start looking towards God. There's more people come to a temple, and then they start reading books like spiritual books. They start inquiring about the purpose of life. So this is the thankless service that Maya Devi or Durga Devi has, that she has to inflict suffering upon these living entities. And this suffering, again, as Prabhupada is explaining, the whole purpose of this suffering is to bring the soul closer to Krishna. Because that's the only way the soul can be happy. It's for its own good, just like Prabhupada explains. Another example Prabhupada gives, that one example we heard, that this material was just like a prison house, meant to rectify sinful or misbehaving citizens of the society. Another example Prabhupada gives is that of a hospital, that there will be certain persons who go through some mental illness and they act like mad people. So then they go to the hospital, and the purpose of the hospital is to rectify their consciousness and bring them into a sane condition of life. So in the same way, Bhagavatam explains that everyone who is in this material world, they're all actually mad. Lord Rishabhdev, he says in 5th canto, Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. Pramata means, Prabhupada translated, pramata means mad. So Lord Rishabhdev says that everyone in this material world, they understand that the whole goal of their life is sense gratification. And coming up with this conception that sense gratification is the goal of life, they just become completely mad in animal consciousness and just trying to engage in sense gratification. So this is another example Prabhupada gives, that this whole material world is just like a hospital. It's meant to rectify our consciousness. So the doctors who give the patients some injections or medicines, and sometimes it seems that the medicine is bitter, or sometimes it seems the injection is painful, but it's for the good of the patient, to help him rectify his consciousness. Or the beatings or the punishments carried out by the prison guards in the prison, that's all done to rectify the prisoner's consciousness so he starts behaving properly. So in the same way, Maya is like that superintendent of the prison house, or she's like the boss of the hospital, and her duty is to help Krishna or assist Krishna in rectifying the consciousness of all these madly behaving conditioned souls who are going separately away from Krishna. Or the other example Prabhupada was giving here is just like a teacher, when she'll see a student misbehaving in classroom, just to scare that student from doing any further mischief, the teacher will say, okay, I'm going to cut your head off and hang it over there, so don't misbehave. So in this way, these different sufferings that coming upon us, it's all done to help us turn our face towards Krishna. That's why in first canto, Mother Kunti Devi, in one of her prayers, we know the famous prayer, she says that let all of these sufferings come upon me again and again. Because by default, by natural inclination, whenever any suffering comes, one goes towards Krishna. So that's why Mother Kunti is saying, whenever any suffering comes, we're naturally inclined to go towards you. So let these sufferings come again and again and again. Because whenever suffering comes, I'm inclined to go towards your lotus feet. So this is the purpose of why suffering is there in this material world. Another example that Radhashyam Prabhu he gives is of a person called Dhananjaya. The story is called Praharara Dhananjaya. And it's given that one time there was this man and he had few daughters, and these daughters, they were married off. And one time the father, he invites his daughters and his sons-in-law to have a get-together at his house. So they come, they stay at his house for a few days, his daughters and the sons-in-law. And after a few days of staying, the first daughter along with the husband, they leave. The second daughter along with her husband, they leave. But the third guy, his third son-in-law, he didn't leave, he stayed. And he thought, okay, maybe he'll stay a few more days and then he'll leave. But a few days went by, a week went by, 2 weeks went by, still that third son-in-law or that last son-in-law still wasn't leaving. He was still staying in his house. And by this time the father, he was becoming a bit irritated. Man, this guy, I just invited him just for a day or two just to catch up, with my family. He's not leaving, he's just staying in my house, And he doesn't want to directly come and tell him, like, can you please leave and go back to your house? So how can I, get rid of him? So then he asked his son that, this is our son-in-law, he's just staying with us, he's not leaving, he's just eating and sleeping in the house, doing no work. How can we get rid of this guy? And then the son says, what you do, when you serve him, from now on, when you serve him prasad, only give him rice, dal, and don't serve him sabji, don't serve him chapatis, don't serve him any sweets. Reduce the amount of prasad you serve him. So then he does that. But still the son-in-law is still staying, the son-in-law is still not leaving the house. Then the son says to the father, okay, now you stop the rice, only give him dal. And make the dal very diluted, with no spice, nothing, just only give him plain boiled dal with nothing else. So in this way, he kept reducing the prasad more and more. But still this guy still wasn't leaving. Then finally the son said, okay, forget it, don't worry, I'll take care of it. You simply go. And then the next day what happens? The son comes, he gets a big stick, and while the son-in-law who's not leaving for so many weeks and months, he's sleeping in his bed, the son takes a stick and just starts beating that guy again and again and again and again. Until the guy's he's just woken up and he's just bewildered, and then he just runs out of the house, never to come back again. So Prabhu was explaining that this is like life in this material world. That Maya Devi should put different sufferings. So these different sufferings, they're compared to, just like the sun, he's reducing the prasad of this guy to make him get the point that, please leave, this place is not for you, can you please leave? So in the same way, Maya Devi should put different sufferings towards us to help us understand that this place is not our actual home, this place is not meant for enjoyment, we should get out of this place and go back home, back to Godhead. And finally, when the son-in-law comes and beats him with a stick, so sometimes Maya Devi, she has to impose some very great suffering. So there's some small sufferings due to mind or suffering due to other living entities. Someone says something bad to us, someone insults us. So they're like small little sufferings. So this is compared to the sun reducing, one item, then after another week reducing a second item from the prasad, then after another week reducing another item. So these are little small sufferings Maya Devi is giving. But still, when the son sees that this guy is just not getting the point, he's just still stuck here, then the guy understands, okay, I have to do something really bad for this guy to leave. So then he gets a stick and just really starts, beating the life out of this guy. Then finally he goes away. So sometimes, in the same way, Prabhupada explains that there will be small sufferings to remind us that this material world is not a place of happiness. But sometimes when Durga Devi, Maya Devi sees that even after all these different sufferings, these guys are still not getting the point, then she'll put some big suffering, she'll put some big calamity towards society. Like some hurricane or some pandemic like we're going through now. A big suffering or big prahar will come to wake up the living entities and to help them see Krishna or go towards Krishna. So in this way the Shastras or Prabhupada, he is helping us understand that this suffering is done for a purpose. And that purpose is to turn our face towards Krishna. And this is the mercy of the Lord, because by constitution we can't enjoy separately from Krishna. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of the fish. The fish constitutionally, its position is in the water. As long as the fish is in the water, he'll be happy and peaceful. And when the fish comes out of the water, no matter what you give the fish, some nice prasad or a nice house, a car, even a nice she-fish or this and that, still the fish will never be happy, because by constitution the fish is an animal of the water. So the best thing that you can do for the fish, or the greatest gift you can do for that fish, the greatest mercy you can show to that fish, is to pick up that fish and put it back into the water. So when Krishna is through his mature energies, putting forward these different sufferings upon us jivas. This is the mercy of the Lord, and this is to help us come out of this and go towards his lotus feet. Because only when we come in contact with his lotus feet, only when we come in contact with his devotional service, can we actually be happy. The same thing is nicely explained. I was reading in 9th canto, again in Ramayana. 9th canto, where Sukadeva Goswami is giving a nice summary of Ramayana. Towards the end of the Ramayana pastimes, it's explained that after Lord Ramachandra, he conquers Ravana and his soldiers, and he comes back to Ayodhya. He is crowned as the king of Ayodhya. And at that time, Lord Ramachandra, as a dutiful king, setting the example, he starts doing many different sacrifices. And generally in any sacrifice, one is supposed to give lots and lots of charity. And we'll hear again and again in Bhagavatam of great kings giving so much intense charity to brahmanas, cows, wealth, riches, and so on and so forth. But Lord Ramachandra, as the most ideal king, he exceeds all the great kings in the past in terms of his charity. How? It's explained in the Bhagavatam that whatever Lord Ramachandra had in his possession, he gave literally everything in charity to brahmanas until he had nothing left in his possession except for the clothes on his body. So after giving in charity, he pretty much just become like a pauper, just like a poor man on the street. The only thing he had left was whatever clothes he was wearing on his body. And the Bhagavatam explains that the only thing Mother Sita had was just her nose ring and the clothes she was wearing in her body. So all the different jewels and whatever they had, the whole kingdom, the palace, the whole land, the chariots, the whole treasury of the kingdom, every single thing that Lord Ramachandra had in his possession, he just donated in charity to the brahmanas. In this way, Lord Ramachandra, Prabhupada explained, that he is showing the ideal mood of a munificent king. The kindness of a king, that he just completely gives himself fully in charity to the brahmanas. Then the brahmanas, they suddenly have all this wealth, the wealth of the whole world. Now as brahmanas, what are they going to do? Brahmanas, as we know, the Shastras explain that brahmanas, they accept in charity and also they give in charity. It's explained that at the start of the day, the brahmana will get some charity, and at the end of the day, whatever excess the brahmana has that he can't engage in his daily duties, he will again give it out as charity, and at the end of the day, the brahmana will again become just like a poor man. So this is the duty of brahmana. It's not just to accept charity, but also to give in charity. And when these brahmanas, they suddenly get the whole entire wealth of Lord Ramachandra, initially, the first emotion is that they're just completely moved by how much the Lord loves them. Imagine someone, a big billionaire, just comes and just gives everything, whatever they have in their possession, to you, and the only thing that billionaire is left is just with the clothes in the body. They don't even have a single dollar to their name. Then one will get completely astonished and bewildered. So in the same way that these brahmanas, they're completely astonished by how merciful, how magnanimous the Supreme Lord Ramachandra is, that he's just completely given all the wealth, all of his possessions in charity to them. And even all the possessions of his wife, he's donated in charity, and all Mother Sita has is just her nose ring in her possession. So the Bhagavatam explains that these brahmanas, they were feeling so moved by the mercy of Lord Ramachandra, by how much the Lord loves them. Then the brahmanas, they say something very beautiful. They say that, my Lord, you have already entered our hearts, and by entering our hearts, you have dissipated the dense darkness of ignorance which is in our hearts. And by dissipating the dense darkness of ignorance in our hearts, you have already bestowed upon us the most greatest charity. You've already bestowed upon us the most greatest, the most supreme gift. One who has already gotten this supreme gift or the supreme charity of having his darkness or his avidya dissipated by your mercy, what else is there to be achieved? What else is there to be attained? So therefore, we don't need all these wealth and opulences that we have. So in this way, the brahmanas, again, whatever they got in charity, they again gave it back to Lord Ramachandra. So in this way, the brahmanas explain that the most precious gift, the most precious item of charity one can give to someone is dissipating the dense darkness of ignorance in the hearts. Because it is only due to that darkness of ignorance, it is only due to that avidya, all suffering, all miseries are happening in this world. Just like the fish out of the water. All the sufferings the fish is going through is because the fish is outside of his constitutional position, which is to be in the water. The greatest gift you can give to that fish, the greatest charity you can give to that fish is to pick up that fish and put it back in the water. So in the same way, these Brahmanas explain that, my dear Lord, you've already entered our hearts and dissipated our dense darkness of ignorance. That's already the most supreme gift. So we don't need all these other wealth and opulences. In this way, they give back to Lord Ramachandra. So in this way, we can understand that the greatest gift of the Lord, that Krishna has a super soul in the heart through the Shastras, through the spiritual masters, through his devotees, through his holy name, through his books. He's helping us dissipate the dense darkness within the hearts and helping us come towards his lotus feet. And this is the supreme mercy of the Lord. So the question Vidura is asking is, how is it that these living entities are suffering through so much pain, even though Krishna is seated within the heart, so close to them? And we heard that this suffering is not due to Krishna, it's actually due to our own desire. Because of the little independence we have, we desire to enjoy separate from Krishna, therefore we are put into this material world. And these sufferings are meant to take us closer to Krishna's feet. Just like we have discussed many times in the 15th chapter of Gita, Krishna explains that this material world is just like a reflection of the spiritual world. And just like there's a banyan tree, and the banyan tree is reflected on the water, so the reflection is happening on the surface of the water. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that the reflection of the spiritual world, being reflected at this material world, is reflected on the surface of material desire. Just like water is that surface on which the banyan tree is reflected and is turned upside down, similarly that surface on which the spiritual world is reflected and turned upside down is material desire. Because of the material desire of the living entity, this whole material world is created. In this way, Prabhupada explains, just like water is the surface on which the banyan tree is reflected, similarly the material desire of the living entities is that surface by which the spiritual world is reflected as a material world. So the very purpose why Krishna created this material world is not for his enjoyment or his pleasure. Krishna is very happy enjoying his pastimes with his Nityasiddha devotees in the spiritual world. The only reason Krishna creates this material world is simply due to the material desires of these conditioned souls who want to enjoy separate from him. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that this whole material creation has a twofold purpose. The first purpose is Krishna, he wants to satisfy our desires, to enjoy separate from him. That's why he has to create a whole separate reality, like a virtual reality where one can enjoy separate from him. And the second purpose of this material world, Prabhupada explains, is that Krishna understands that although we want to enjoy separate from him, it's actually not possible. By constitution, we can't enjoy separate from him. So therefore, Krishna, the second purpose of this material world is what we're discussing, is to rectify the consciousness and to help the soul come back to him. And how does the material world rectify consciousness? Is through suffering. So this suffering that's coming upon living entities, it's done for a particular reason and it's done for our own good. It's help us to take us back to Krishna's lotus feet. And this is the mercy of the Lord. So the question shouldn't be is that why are we suffering despite the presence of Super Soul? But the question rather should be that why is it that Krishna, even though he is trying in so many different ways to help us, he is coming as the holy name, he is coming as his books, Bhagavatam, he is coming as his devotees, even though Krishna is incarnating in so many different incarnations and he is coming in so many different ways to deliver us, why is it that still we're not getting the point? Why is it that still we're so much hung up or so much hardwired to engage in sense gratification? And Prabhupada, he gives the example, it's just like someone hugging a tree and saying, the tree is holding me, I can't let go of the tree. But actually, we ourselves are holding on to the tree. So in the same way, Prabhupada is explaining that it's all this suffering, all these things is actually due to our independence. We ourselves are holding on to material nature. We ourselves are not letting go of sense gratification. Even though Krishna is trying to help us in so many different ways. He's helping us through his material energy, by putting sufferings towards us to remind us this material world is not a place of suffering, is not a place of enjoyment for us. He's coming through Shastras. The Shastras, Krishna, through the Shastras, he's trying to dissipate ignorance. He's coming as the holy name. He's coming as his pure devotees. He's coming himself as incarnations. It's given in the Bhagavatam, the 9th canto, that when the Supreme Lord, he comes in incarnations, he does his pastimes in such a way to attract the attention of the living entities, so that for many, many generations in the future, everyone will discuss his pastimes, and in this way get purified and go back home, back to Godhead. And particularly about Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, it's given. Sukadeva Goswami, he says that Lord Ramachandra's pastimes was just like the pastimes of a baby elephant. And if you think about it, a baby elephant, out of all the examples Sukadeva Goswami could give, why does he give the example of a baby elephant? If we go to a zoo, and there'll be big elephants, and there'll be a small elephant. The big elephant, they look really nice, but because they're so huge, there's like a certain sense of awe and reverence, and there's a little bit of fear, man, this big guy, if he comes close to me, I'll be finished. Just one kick from this big elephant, and I'll be gone. But small elephants, they're very cute. Like on YouTube, you can watch very nice, very beautiful, cute videos of baby elephants. They're very cute, and their pastimes are very, or they're different, how the baby elephant walks and how he plays in the water, how he rolls around in the mud. It's very captivating to the eyes. So in the same way, Lord Ramachandra, Sukadeva Goswami explains, he did his pastimes in such a way that it was very captivating for all the citizens, for whoever was present. Not just at that time, but for persons in the future. So in the same way, Sukadeva Goswami explains that whenever the Supreme Lord comes and he does his pastimes, he does it in a way that it becomes very attractive, not just for those persons who are there, but also for the future generations. People will discuss about how wonderful these pastimes were, and this way they'll get purified. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that Krishna, he's trying so many different ways and tactics to help us come back to him, but still we're so stubborn, we're still so arrogant, and so much stuck up in sense gratification that we're not letting go, we're not getting the point, and we're not turning our face towards Krishna. And that's why the Shastras give, they explain that that person who assists Krishna in helping the conditioned soul turn his face towards Krishna, that person is doing the topmost service for him, that person is the dearmost servitor to him. Because this is the innermost desire of the Lord. All these conditioned souls, they're all sons and daughters of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, and Radha Gopinath missing them. So that person who assists Radha Gopinath get reunited by these lost conditioned souls, then Radha Gopinath are eternally grateful for them. Again, in the Ramayana, in 9th canto, it's given that after Lord Ramachandra, he becomes the king of Ayodhya. And at that time, all the brothers, they all reunited. So for 14 days, they were in 14 years, they were in exile. So which is a super long amount of time. So for such a long period of time, Lord Ramachandra, he was separated from his other two brothers, Bharat Maharaj and, what was the other brother? Shatrughna. So for 14 years, they were separated, and finally they're reunited, and everyone's happy together. And one would think that for the rest of the lifetime, they all four brothers, they very nicely got together and very nicely and happily spent the rest of the lifetime in Ayodhya, enjoying each other's company. But no, Bhagavatam explains, Sukadeva Goswami explains, after Lord Ramachandra, he becomes crowned as king after coming back from exile. Immediately, Bhagavatam explains, Sukadeva Goswami explains, that immediately Lord Ramachandra, he tells his brothers to not stay in Ayodhya and to go out and conquer different kingdoms. And there's one verse in which Sukadeva Goswami explains that Lord Ramachandra, he tells his brothers that don't stay back here in Ayodhya and just enjoy your senses here with me. Instead, go out and do service. Instead, go out and conquer the other kingdoms. And in the purport, Prabhupada, he extends this and says what we can learn from this. Prabhupada, in his purport to this verse, he explains that these four brothers, or these three brothers of Lord Ramachandra, they were so happy to finally be reunited with their supreme worshipper, Lord Ramachandra. And they were experiencing so much pleasure being in the personal company of their supreme Lord, of their supreme brother, Lord Ramachandra. But Prabhupada explains, Lord Ramachandra, he told them that instead of all of you guys staying here and enjoying my company just for your own happiness, just for your own sense gratification, instead you go out and you go conquer the other kingdoms. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that all of us as devotees in the Hare Krishna movement, instead of just staying in closed doors and just enjoying Krishna for ourselves and just being happy, enjoying Krishna's prasad, enjoying singing and dancing for ourselves. Just like Lord Ramachandra told his brothers, don't be selfish, don't just stay here and just enjoy my company, instead go out and do some service. In the same way, Krishna wants us, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants us, not to just be put up in one place. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants us to not to just enjoy Krishna for oneself and just engage in one's own pleasure, but instead Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also wants us to go out. Just like Lord Ramachandra is ordering, that you go this direction, you'll conquer these kingdoms, you go this direction, you conquer these kingdoms. In the same way, Prabhupada is explaining that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, Yare dekho, tare dekho, Krishna upades, Amara agyan guru hoy, tare desh. Lord Mahaprabhu is simply instructing us that we shouldn't just be put up in one place, enjoying Krishna, we should go out and convert others to the lotus feet of Radha Gopinath, and in this way help the other fallen conditioned souls come back to the lotus feet of Krishna. In this way, we'll help so many other conditioned souls, and this way we'll be giving the greatest pleasure to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. Okay, it's 8:46. I'll stop here. Is there any questions or comments? This one. Okay.
How do the miseries that we suffer in one lifetime, if we don't really come to Krishna consciousness, how does it help us to come to Krishna consciousness?
Can you say the last bit again?
The miseries that we experience, let's say in this lifetime, we experience all the miseries, right? But we don't come to Krishna consciousness. How will the miseries that we experience in the present lifetime help us to come to Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, the miseries are just like a impetus for us to turn towards Krishna. Now, again, it's upon us, it's our responsibility, then we always have the independence. Either we can choose Krishna or choose Maya. So when the miseries are coming towards us, we're supposed to go towards Krishna. But still, there'll be certain souls of the jiva, they'll misuse the independence and still they won't turn towards Krishna, despite those miseries or sufferings happening upon them. So that soul, it always has that independence. But the whole purpose of these miseries, like even for initiated devotees, like devotees, they ask Prabhupada this question that at the time of initiation, it's mentioned that the spiritual master accepts all the karma, all the sins of the disciple. Then how is it that even after initiation, still different sufferings come upon us? Still, devotees might get into a car accident, or some different miseries might come upon their lives. So Prabhupada gave the example, it's just like you have a fan rotating and then you turn the off switch. So that's like the time of initiation. Now once you turn off the off switch, the fan doesn't just immediately stop. It will take some time, and slowly the fan will come to a stop after some time. So in the same way, Prabhupada explained that even after initiation, Krishna will still give a little bit of karma or bad experience, and the purpose of that is to again remind the devotee that this material world is not a place for you. This material world is not your constituted place. This material world is a place of suffering. So even after one becomes a devotee, Prabhupada explains, once Krishna still gives little suffering to the devotee, just to remind the devotee that this material world is not a nice place for us to be. And my Guru Maharaj was also mentioning this point that for him, he loves reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, but although he can just read only CC and nothing else, he still makes it a habit to daily read Bhagavatam. And the reason he reads Bhagavatam is to remind himself how this material world is a place full of suffering. So the nature of the soul is, conditioned nature is that we can easily get overcome by forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is so powerful. The thing we heard today in class, we'll remember for half an hour, 1 hour, then we'll just forget. So therefore my Guru Maharaj is saying that he daily reads Bhagavatam just to remind himself this point. This is like one of the main topics of Bhagavatam. How this material world is a place of suffering. Like any pastime we take, we'll see how a particular person or a devotee was going through suffering. That's the whole design of this material world. So that's the whole reason of the suffering. And what was the question again? How is it the...
How does that suffering help us to come to Krishna
In the future lifetime, it won't help us, because when we take another birth, we forget whatever sufferings we went through in the past body. So we get different types of sufferings in the future birth. And again, it's like a ticket, someone is giving you a ticket, and it's up to us. Either we can grab that ticket and go catch the plane back to Godhead, or we can say, no, thank you. So when there's suffering and misery is coming, it's the ownership of that conditioned soul. They can use that suffering to turn towards spirituality, turn towards God, or again, they have the independence to say no. From our side, it's our duty to go and put ourselves forward towards people, so all these people who are suffering, they can get opportunity to turn towards Krishna. Because many people, they're suffering, and they're looking for a way out, but they don't know where to get genuine help. So that's why, like Taman Krishna Maharaj, he was giving in one lecture this nice example. He was saying that it's the duty of all devotees to give every single person in society an opportunity to come closer to Krishna. And if we fail in this attempt to give every single person in society an opportunity to come close to Krishna, then Yamaraj's job becomes very difficult. How so? Taman Krishna Maharaj, he says that when Yamaraj comes at the time of death to take a sinful soul to the hellish planets, the sinful soul can say that, this isn't fair. I never knew that I'm supposed to do bhakti. I never knew that I'm supposed to do devotional service. No one taught me. But if, as devotees, we gave this particular soul some opportunity to come in close to Krishna, then Yamaraj can argue back and say, no, you did have opportunity. In 2010, this Sankirtan devotee, he came knocking on your door. He came with you with these beautiful spiritual books. He told you that you read this book and all your miseries will be gone, you'll get real happiness, and you rejected him, you went away. And in 2022, there was a Harinam party going on, and someone was again trying to give you a mantra card. Again, you rejected, you didn't take. So in this way, Yamaraj can defend himself. So in this way, Maharaj explains that it's our duty to give every single person in society, every single person in Sydney, the 4 million persons in Sydney, the 20 million persons in Australia, we should try and give every single person in society an opportunity to come close to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. That's our duty. But we can't force anyone. It's that person who are trying to give Krishna, they have that independence. Either they can take that ticket back home, back to Godhead, and go on the plane and go back home, or they can reject it. So that independence is always there. That independence is always there, that when miseries come, they can use that as an impetus to go towards Krishna, or they can just say, no, I'll continue on, I'll still keep going. Just like the Dhananjaya guy, regardless of whatever sufferings was coming towards him, the prasad being reduced, still he was saying, no, I'll continue staying here. So that independence is always there with the jiva. But as devotees, what we can do from our side, we can take it upon ourselves. We have this responsibility, as Taman Krishna Maharaj is saying, that we should some or other give every single person in this land of Australia an opportunity to some or other come close to Krishna. Then the rest is up to those conditions. So we can't force anyone. It's up to them. But at least from our side, we can put the ticket in front of them. Here it is, a ticket out of all your sufferings. Here is a ticket back home, back to Godhead, a ticket to eternal happiness. But we can't just shove it in their face and force them. But from our side, we can try and some or other give every single person an opportunity in this land to come close to Krishna, either it's through holy name, through book distribution, prasadam distribution, internet preaching, this or that. So in this way, this is the mood of the devotee. He wants to assist Krishna in bringing back the fallen conditioned souls. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay, we'll stop. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagurusha Prabhupada ki jai, Tagore Pramanande.